got to be supporting particularly those vulnerable neighborhoods, and we have that's been a hashtag fail on this issue.
Well, as part of our election coverage, we're doing interviews with each of the national party leaders. Elizabeth May was on the program 2 weeks ago. Each of the remaining leaders was offered either traditional one-on-one interviews or less formal time, questioning them on the campaign trail. Jack Layton chose the latter. So on Friday and Saturday, we followed him in Atlantic Canada. Fresh from that hashtag fail moment in the debates where most analysts said he did well, and his polls showed his party, after a slow start, was edging up. I caught up with him on the road near Charlottetown. So, be honest, tell me the truth. Who gave you the hashtag fail line?
Well, it was, I think it was probably Carl Bélanger when we were kicking around different ideas.
Did you know what it meant at the
Yes,
time?
I knew what it meant. I knew what it meant, but that's because Olivia is a relentless user of Twitter. So she's got all of the lingo down. I think our goal should be to maximize the number of people that are voting.
Jack Layton is 60, NDP leader since 2003, running in his fourth election. By his own admission, a critical one for him and for his fourth-place party. Where's the bar set for you on this campaign?
That's an interesting question. I've always said, I'm a long tack sailor, or another metaphor would be building a house. I like to start with a strong foundation. So as far as the bar I set for myself and for the team is let's just keep building.
You think that things have to move very quickly for you this time? And I ask that, when you look at the stats for the elections that you've run as leader, you're quite right. It's gone up each time. Mm-hmm. 04, 06, 08. Numbers have gone up in terms of seats, percentage of the vote.
Yeah.
The actual vote dropped a little bit last time, but the percentage of the vote went up. But is it time to make a significant move now?
That's up to the Canadian people, but we're certainly working to accomplish that objective, and we'll have to see on the late at night on May 2nd whether we've made that quantum type of leap. And I think we're laying the groundwork for it. You never really know in politics when that's going to happen. You can't actually predict it. And if you do, you're getting a little too cocky.
At the beginning of the campaign, there was much talk about Layton's health. He is, after all, battling prostate cancer and hobbling around after recent hip surgery.
I have a little housekeeping, then I'll hand it over to you.
Very good.
Wonderful.
John? Nice to meet you, John.
At first, there were clumsy attempts to hide the cane, but now it's almost become a symbol of power.
Please, a huge East Coast Music Awards welcome.
Anyone who thinks this guy is held back because of his health hasn't tried to keep up with him for a day on the campaign trail. But the last year has taught him lessons. You and I represent the generation that is now going to start overloading that public health care system. You've seen it because you've been part of that already in the last year. Do you not worry that we just simply are not going to have enough money to pay for this? Whether it's new programs, scaled back other programs?
I do worry about that. I think that these discussions coming up in 2014, leading up to 2014 with the provinces, are going to have to grapple with that issue. I do worry about that because the younger generation coming along is going to be saying to themselves, how much can we afford?
You have the answer for it, yeah?
I have some, but I certainly not the total answer. The programs that we've put forward in this election, I've mentioned long-term home and home care and Medicare, getting that pharmaceutical costs down. The other one is more access to family doctors. So I think looking at prevention and primary care as a kind of an investment in avoiding some of these costs is going to be important. Are any of these magic bullets, snap your fingers, job's done? No. It's going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face.
In the 24 hours we spent following Layton, he hit 3 provinces, attacking the Liberals as often as the Conservatives, dropping millions in promises, shaking lots of hands, making lots of small talk. Late into the night, he was still on his feet, dodging the drink tray on a flight to Newfoundland, and trying to dodge a constant campaign issue, the C word, coalition. 2008, was it a mistake? The coalition?
Oh, I don't think so. I think Stephen Harper was headed down a path driven by ideology to do nothing about the economic crisis. And something had to shake him up. And either he had to change or the government had to be changed, because hundreds of thousands of people were being thrown out of work. As it happens, he turned around and adopted essentially the program that we had laid out between the three opposition parties. So
he's also used it as a weapon ever since.
Well, sure. I mean, that's Stephen Harper. He likes to pick up a weapon and try to use it. I have a lot of faith in Canadians. They actually like the idea of people working together.
Well, they don't like the idea of a coalition.
Some do, some don't. But they do like the notion that we should work together on their behalf. And that's what I'm saying I will do with whatever mandate I'm given.
What happened in 2004? Give me the 30-second version of what happened there.
It's almost too long ago for me to remember. There's been 4 elections since then. What aspect of it?
The meeting that you and Duceppe and Harper had.
Well, we were called together by Stephen Harper to send a letter to the Governor General to make it clear that if Paul Martin was defeated on the speech from the throne, she should turn to the other parties to govern.
The other parties to govern.
Other parties to govern. And the letter that was written, which we all signed, and which represents the constitutional truth of the matter here in Canada and in the Westminster tradition, was sent to the Governor General. There was no question about it that the ultimate goal here was for Stephen Harper to become Prime Minister. And the more I thought about that, and I later had a conversation one-on-one with Duceppe, and I said, "Are you ready to make Stephen Harper Prime Minister?" And he said he was. And I said, "Well, I'm not. So I'm out of this group."
Well, what do you mean you were out of the group? Did you put an X through your signature, or what did you do?
No, I left the discussions, and I no longer participated in the effort to put pressure on Paul Martin, and I said I am not prepared to vote to make Stephen Harper Prime Minister.
So with that, did it collapse?
Well, it then didn't have the necessary oomph to come to be. Mr. Martin accepted some of the procedural motions, and the crisis was averted. But there's no question that Stephen Harper was prepared to become Prime Minister, even though he had fewer seats. Absolutely no question about it. He is simply not telling the truth right now, in my opinion.
He's being less than genuine when he says that's not.
He's not telling the truth.
So he's lying.
Well, I'll put it this way: he's not telling the truth, and just like he said when there would be fixed election dates, and he broke his word on that to the other parties and to Canadians. That's really when I told him to his face, I've lost the ability to trust you now.
When Stephen Harper says that for him it has to be a majority, because if he doesn't get a majority, then the books are already cooked against him, that you and the Liberals and the Bloc will vote non-confidence and immediately try to form an arrangement just between the three of you.
Well, I know he wanted to do that in 2004, but he's fabricating things here. There have been no discussions about that, and he gets the first shot. The question will be, is he willing to work with other parties? Now, I haven't seen that to be his approach in the 5 years that I've seen him as Prime Minister. It really hasn't been, can we sit down and find some common ground? That's never really happened. In fact, normally when I meet with him, he says, we don't really agree on very much. He literally makes that explicit point, which I don't find as a particularly good way to suggest that you're willing to work with people, to be honest. It's not an open, let's see where we can find some common ground, which is what I think a Prime Minister should do. Prime Minister should recognize that lots of people voted for other parties, maybe even a majority of Canadians voted for other parties. And so I would think, out of respect for those Canadians, that whoever is Prime Minister should reach out. If I were Prime Minister, that's what I'd do. I'd say all of those members of Parliament were elected by Canadians and deserve some respect. So let's see what we can work on together.
Last question. Some would see you in the same position that Preston Manning was in through the 90s. That his success allowed Jean Chrétien to win majority after majority after majority, because he was splitting the vote between the Progressive Conservatives and himself. Does Jack Layton run the risk of being the Preston Manning of this era?
No, because our party is 50 years old. We have been there working for working families, bringing Medicare to Canada, bringing the Canada Pension Plan to Canada, often in minority government situations. We have worked with other parties to get results. That was not what the Reform Party was all about, that's for sure. And so we're a very different kind of animal. I wouldn't see that as a comparison at all.
The time now is 6 o'clock on the island, 5:30 in most of Labrador. Good morning,
It's kind of one of those good days, Jack.
Saturday morning, and his senior staff brief him on reports indicating an NDP surge.
If we can go over the speech, then we can get any changes in so we can get them into teleprompter in time.
And then it's the cane and the man into an enthusiastic rally in St. John's. The energy certainly gets to Layton. In the past, NDP leaders have been hesitant about suggesting they could win the top job in the land. Not this guy. His speech has lots of references to that possibility.
I am running to be the Prime Minister who will open the doors to every part of this country being a part of what goes on.
I was listening to you again today, and it just seems to me that you talk about the possibility of being Prime Minister more than I think I've ever heard you talk about it before. Is it, or how realistic is it to think of going from number 4 to number 1?
If you don't try, you'll never get there. And so, after all, when I say that to people, they'll say, well, of course, that's what you'd be running for. And that would allow you to do the things that you're committing to Canadians.
But it's a big gap, 4 to 1.
Sure, but that's what the election is about, is who's going to be Prime Minister and which party and which ideas. And we've said, you elect us and we have some things we're going to do in the first 100 days for your family around health and affordability and jobs. And you make that offer, and then people will head off on May 2nd and make that decision.
You know, some people say that though that offer of the 100 days is really the major difference between you and especially the Liberals, that in many cases the promises are the same, but you're promising to do them now, not 4 years from now or 5 years from now. How are you going to pay for that?
Well, we have a different approach on the taxation front, number one, and we have a different approach on the issue of carbon credits. We are going to generate some revenue sources that are going to help us to get moving on all of those things. And of course, it's a step-by-step process, but we want to start right off the bat. These programs where they're promising things they're going to do at the very end of their mandate, or maybe even after the next election, I've never seen that before, really. And it strikes me as kind of odd. So I thought we would come right out and point out to people, we're not talking about working for your family someday down the road. We'll get started right away.
But they're trying to say that it can't be afforded right now, and that's why they're making the promises that way, that they're being responsible by doing it that way.
We laid out exactly how we're going to make this happen in real detail, and people can look at the numbers. I think giving the banks another tax cut of billions of dollars is irresponsible.
One other point on that, and it's the Globe did a nice flattering article on where you are and where your party is this weekend, suggesting that there's a bit of a surge going on and that you're looking good. But they did make the point that it's hard beyond Afghanistan to see the difference between you and the Liberal Party, other than the leader.
The difference is in the record. The Liberals have been in power before. The biggest cuts to health care came under the Liberals.
But is that the only difference, the fact that they were in power?
They were, and they broke their promises. We have yet to be in power. We're making some commitments. We've got a strong record of delivering on what we say we're going to do in minority parliaments, and now we'd like the opportunity to do it as the leader of the governing party.
But is that the major difference between you and the Liberals? Is that you don't have a record in power, so you don't have to defend whether you broke it or not?
The major difference is that we are committing to get things done. They've made commitments and then turned right around and broken those commitments time and time again. That's the major difference.